What's going on, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence. I am Jack Allen. As always, if you listen, you're already following me, but follow me on Twitter at Conspiracyorjac. I'm on Gab. I don't ever post there though, because I am one of the fortunate few that still remains on Twitter of the group. But follow me there. If you want to support the show, I got a website, conspiracyorjustacoincidence.com. Yeah. And I'll put, if there's other places to post, I'm looking at Odyssey and all those things like that. I don't know. I'm not tech savvy, and because I don't talk politics, I feel like and I don't have enough listeners to be on the radar, and I don't say anything too flagrant. So I try to just stick with the history and things like that, because I don't know what to believe in. There's nothing to believe. There's very few things that if our government says it or anything like that, it's very hard to believe anything that they say. So yeah, so today's episode, sorry, Miss Liv texted me, she's at work. Okay, now I'm back. So today's episode is on nukes. And I think a lot of people in the truther community, they know that I've heard this before, that nukes aren't real, and I never really looked into it because it seems like a pretty wild thing to say, right? It's not, it just seems like a wild thing to say. So I took a break from my, what's it called? Reading about Tartaria and history, which I already finished another one that's going to be a crazy episode on the maps of the 17th century. I think I kind of talked about it in an episode with Adam from Deborah Gets Red Pilled. But yeah, so we're going to talk about that. But I wanted to do this because I just was I got to read this, right? I got to read this. So in 2016, this nuke lie has just been pushed for so long, dude. In 2016, Russia supposedly invented a new ICBM, 50 megaton charge, more than all the bombs, including the atomic bombs dropped in World War II. And it's called Satan II. It could wipe out the state of Texas or France. Damn, terrifying, right? Terrifying. Where is that? But I don't think they have it. They don't have it at all. There's all this. So right now, with the thought of nukes, is they exit the atmosphere, which I'm already, alarm bells are going off my head. They exit the atmosphere. They leave Earth. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Did you watch? I'm sure I just saw it today. China landed on Mars as well. How convenient. They just landed on Mars as well, right? So crazy. But they I just don't believe it. Just don't believe it. It looked so fake. It looked horrible. So anyway, so they leave the atmosphere, they re-enter in the suborbital space flight. Currently, there are 6 safety devices used in a single nuke to avoid inadvertent nuclear detonation. Thank goodness. They carry around that little suitcase, the nuclear football, in case they ever want to drop some. It's just like a movie. It's just like a movie. It's not, I mean, I know, yeah, it's just not real. It's just to scare you. They supposedly, the intense infrared energy is released and instantly burns your skin that's exposed. It melts your organs. This also happens, called a nuclear shadow. This is a man pushing a cart in Hiroshima. The nuke went off and it burned it. It caught his shadow on the wall and burned it there. I mean, what is there to say? It just looks ridiculous, right? It looks it's like they stole that from Peter Pan or something. The little boy that was dropped in Hiroshima, 980 miles per hour winds, 8,600 pounds per square foot. And all these, I just wonder, I tried to articulate this with Adam I had him on my show. We shared shows, I don't know what you would call it, but this book, the Mahabharata in the Hindu religion, I've heard about it because of Ancient Aliens. If you guys ever watch Ancient, which I'm sure you have, but it talks about this celestial weapon that whoever in, Vishnu or whichever character in their book had, they used on the people. It turned the ground glass and a canopy of tawny silk, which is the mushroom cloud. And I don't know what I'm trying to point out by saying that, how similar that that war scene is compared to what happens in a nuke. I don't know what that means, but there's like something there, right? Is it like acts? I don't know what it's doing. I don't know what that means, but I just found it interesting, right? So why does nobody ever drop a bomb on each other, right? We did it twice. We did it to Japan, and never to be done again because it was so horrible. And what happened to Japan was absolutely horrible. I don't want what happened to any country ever in a war that they didn't need to be in, which is every war. Um, it was people at the top pulling strings. Yeah, they're all horrible, but the destruction from one bomb isn't real. But so the mutually assured destruction, the fear of nuclear war, winter, that is what has kept people away from dropping nukes on each other. They say it's just too powerful. We don't want to fully destroy a country because they'll do it to us. So let's just send little bombs. And you can see how that logic is failed. Like in any fight, okay, so the people that run us are complete psychopaths. I think we can all agree, just totally nuts. So you're telling me, like, and that happens everywhere because only people that are complete psychopaths gravitate to these positions of that kind of power. So if someone drops a little bomb on their country or does something, some terrorist act, you're not telling me that crazy psychopath wouldn't respond with crazier response? Like in fights, people who aren't total psychopaths also do the same thing. So someone throws a beer in someone's face, they pick up a chair and smack the dude with the chair. Do you see what I mean? So that logic is just already that brings up like me to think, to ask some questions why this has never happened. Yeah. So I'm not saying that nuclear power isn't real at all. I'm pretty sure like with power plants or submarine engines, it's possible to control slow nuclear fission reactions that generate heat and energy. And I have no idea if it's safe. I have no idea if it causes bad waste. I have no idea. I have no idea. But the thought that we could send off like a nuclear chain reaction that causes a massive amount of energy and then released, vaporizing everything in sight is not real. So there's all this stuff like let me pull up. I think I have my next photo here. So this is the atom, the Bohr atomic model. Everyone knows this picture. If you're just listening, it is the picture that you get drawn in science class where you have the atom with the nucleus and the electrons. Okay, so if the nucleus was like the size of a baseball, the shell would be empty space for like miles. The electrons would be out in space. That's pretty much as far as I got in science. But all this information about this nuke was called born in secret doctrine, where anything around it was totally, it was guarded secrets. It was like need to know, all that stuff. You can never hear about it. But then of course we somehow sold that, or that data got snuck out and went to the Soviet Union. And then people have found documents in the back of public libraries and encyclopedias. So it's basically all public domain now. Like you could find everything you wanted. And if you were much smarter than me, which I'm sure many of you are, you could technically build your own whatever. I don't want to say too much because I don't know if like that would violate some terms of service or something. So yeah. So explosive fission, it's like analogous to a classic game of pinball. So you like pull back the lever and you split and it goes ding, 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 and builds up more pressure as it keeps dinging everything along. That was like the example the author gave in the book. So then it just keeps building energy and it keeps creating more and more energy. And then eventually, right, it explodes. And that's the atom bomb. So this theory was first start with our buddy Albert Einstein, who we have a lot of I've heard a lot of things about him that he probably wasn't, he's a fictitious character. He may have existed, but he was not super smart. So if you can see this photo, that's why everyone thinks, so supposedly Einstein was the guy that came up with the theory, and equals mc squared. Boof, you get a nuke, right? Well, we'll get to that in like 1 sec. But Fat Man, which was the bomb that exploded over Nagasaki, it was supposedly destroyed the whole city with 1 gram or 1/3 the weight of a penny, and the energy created a fireball, 20 kilotons. This would also happen the same thing with the little boy bomb. So close figures per like kilogram: 17K tons of TNT for 1 kilogram of uranium-235, 19 tons of TNT for a kilogram of plutonium. And so according to like E equals mc squared, a very small amount of mass can produce a great amount of energy given the speed of light. So now this sounds confusing as hell, right? I have no idea what E equals mc squared. But for some reason, Einstein's theory with theory of relativity plays a role in the nukes and the theory of fission. And he alerted the US government with this crazy formula of him drawing that in a chalkboard. He wasn't in a tub. I think that was Archimedes, right? Who says Eureka. But he supposedly figured it out that that's how you could build a nuclear bomb. Issue. E equals mc squared plays zero part of nuclear fission. Physicists call it, just has nothing to do with fission at all. So energy released in fission is the same energy released when two atoms or molecules react chemically. So the actual equation relating to nukes is E equals E squared divided by R. Not that that means anything to anybody that's listening unless you're like great at physics, but it's just slowly tearing apart this theory that, you know, Albert Einstein was behind the Manhattan Project and all those things like that. So when 1 pound of uranium, uranium-235 undergoes complete fission, the yield is 8 kilotons. Thus, the 16 kiloton yield of Little Boy in Hiroshima was produced by 2 pounds of uranium out of 235 out of the 141 pounds in the pit of that bomb. Another physicist also, this was wild. So like this physicist, Robert Smith, also brings in Einstein's theory when talking about the blast power of nuclear fission. And I say this, why this is interesting is because clearly like they're using, just like they do today, to use scientists to like push for the bug that shall not be named that has been going around for the past year. They do the same kind of tabloid like reporting. And so with this nuke project, the Manhattan Project, it was written with like a sci-fi slant. And how often have we seen this where sci-fi writers are incorporated into the military industrial or military intelligence community and they push propaganda? We have like L. Ron Hubbard. There's just so much crossover with sci-fi, space, intelligence, aliens. It's all like interconnected into one organization. It just, is it because they're great at telling stories and that's why they use these people? Is it because, you know, again, I always mention this, but like Edward Kelly and John Dee from 1500s, they were the ones that, you know, communicated with, they wrote the Enochian language. That's how, like, what all spells are like based off the Enochian language, the language that Adam and Eve used in the Garden of Eden. And they were spies for the queen at the time. There's just something here that's like puts sci-fi together with intelligence. I don't know what it is. I'm still learning what it is, but okay. So we're being lied to about the math. Maybe they're doing, so like I'll credit that, like, so, you know, clearly the E equals mc squared plays no role of nuclear fission, but okay, so they're lying to us about the math and other people are lying to us about the math, whatever. You're right. That doesn't mean nukes are not real, right? So mass energy and fission is just being overemphasized and distorted, and not like physicists are misusing it, but then I just read you Robert Smith's quote, who worked for Los Alamos. So he's also trying to confuse, or he's confused or something. And that's as far as I can go with physics, because I literally did not take one physics class in high school. So I can't like, some of these things might not make much sense, and you probably can explain that much better than I can. But basically, they have these fast flying neutrons. They have to hit enough targets with a short period of time. And so explosive process requires speed. High energy fast neutrons, downside fast neutrons are less likely to hit a moving target. So you have to like tweak to retain advantage of the fast neutrons while minimizing. So it's like this. The author used, it's not easy to get a neutron to hit the nucleus. Think of it like shooting a bullet into a football stadium and trying to hit that mosquito. And most times you miss, obviously. So that's like that's what they're doing with nukes. Okay, that's the best example that they gave, and that helped me at least understand some of it. So how do they make it more likely to hit? They make the material using enriched uranium-235. That's one way they do it. Then plutonium is even more better for this process. So they would convert uranium-235 to plutonium. They have like bigger neutron spray, something like that. A sphere is the best object that helps you do this crazy neutron whatever thing. So pre-bang checklist here. You need precise, elaborate calculations that ensure a sufficient quantity of fast neutrons going fast enough speeds that they blast through material, and they just keep getting bigger, resulting in enough neutrons being liberated in the collisions. Happens in the right time for an explosive outcome. It's like this Goldilocks problem. They needed to do all these little things to hit each thing splitting up as it goes up or as it drops down. And it's just, the math in it is like, it's a lie, right? That's the best way. Again, I'm trying to like describe what the author was saying, and I couldn't really understand what, there was something with like implosion. I don't know. It was beyond me. But the fact is, like, the math that they do, it's you can't even double check it because it's so hidden, for our safety, you can't double check it. So just show you that they also, while around this time with the nukes, they wanted to figure out, could they ignite the atmosphere? They care about us so much, they want a weapon that can ignite the atmosphere. And this one other scientist realized that immediately you couldn't do it. And this is like a similar thing. If we had the math, we would be able to check. I think that's what my note was trying to say. So why has nobody nuked anybody in anger? I kind of touched on that earlier. But like, no terrorists, no rogue people. They usually say that no one can nuke somebody else because they can't get the materials, the knowledge, the infrastructure. It's too hard to make, you would need another Manhattan Project to do it. But there's enough information to build it. It's all basically unclassified. So that's not true. So, so how they accomplish this goal of building this crazy weapon of God, right? They had Stone Age tool, but they just relied on pure brains and instinct, prayer, and they were able to do it. They developed 2 different weapon designs and implementations. I was trying to tell you that earlier about the implosion, both which work perfectly on the full test and use. Perfectly. No issues whatsoever. This crazy math that nobody could double check, no computers, or bare minimum, like horrible computers, and they nailed it, dude, with just pen and paper, putting it out to the test. They got it. Wow. That's an American story. Today's unclassified, I worry about the words I use. So if somebody hypothetically was like able to do these kind of actions, like build an explosive. They have infinitely more tools than what the Manhattan Project had at their time. You could, reverse engineer the things that they did today easily to double check. So there's one guy, John Coster Mullen book. It's called Atom Bombs, Top Secret Inside Story of Little Boy and Fat Man. This was interesting. So he had he had a complete design manual for how they built these two. He was praised by like big name atomic authorities, including former heads of US nuke labs. Some even say he was in violation of national secrecy laws. He says, well, everything in the book here is unclassified. And but he should be in prison. So if this guy, he wrote the complete design manual for how it happened, he's breaking secrecy laws according to some, it's all just fake propaganda, right? Does that make sense to you? Like, they don't release anything that's not supposed to get out. Nothing. If you did, you get killed or arrested. I mean, there's countless examples of people that have actual secret information that try and get it out and they're discredited immediately or they're killed. Gary Webb, perfect example, a guy who figured out that the US government was in Nicaragua helping with the drug trade. He wrote a book on it, and what happens to him? He commits suicide with 2 gunshots wounds to the head. Yeah. So this guy writing this book, it's just like a story. It's like a little joke, like to say, oh, this book's so good, he might be violating national secrecy laws. It makes zero sense. It makes zero sense. All right. So, but he wrote, and basically with that book, and if you're smarter than me and you have a MacBook, with this information, you can easily see if this could be done or how to build it. Like, all you would need to do with the computer program is to write like the specs for the neutrons, so all this stuff, and you could actually double check the information of what these Manhattan Project did. In this Washington Post article in 2011, in Livermore, California, a group of nuke weapon designers and scientists at this Lawrence Livermore National Lab conducted a fun experiment. Deploying supercomputers, so they got the best computers of the time in 2011, and they wanted to simulate what happens to a nuke from the moment it leaves storage to the point when it hits a target. So like from soups to nuts. It's a phrase we use in my real job. I don't know really what it means, but anyway, soup to nuts means like beginning, like from the inception to the end. So what happened? Well, the simulation from stockpile to target, the weapon failed catastrophically. So what does that mean? So it means either that the supercomputers are not as smart as those amazing Manhattan Project non-computer owning people like Einstein and all these other people, or it's not possible. That was key. So this supercomputer did, with million algorithms, all those things, couldn't recreate the Manhattan Project. Wow, they must have just been so brilliant. Einstein, dude, he's just so smart. He's just so smart, making up theory of relativity that in a place that's probably non-existent. Manhattan Project can complete. So yeah. So like I said, so that supercomputer couldn't do it, but Manhattan Project, they were able to do it with just sheer grit. 1%. I don't know what they want, but yeah. So the calculability was literally Stone Age compared to the supercomputer. Yet they get a huge boom 3 times. So that's the secret. There must have some secret sauce that they're using, because otherwise anyone could make the bomb, right? Or they just never did. They just never did. There's a picture of my math drawing. I don't know if all this stuff about these change. So they're saying essentially like, all these perfectly timed explosions that I wrote these notes. I don't even know what the hell I wrote. I can't figure out the math. I had like a picture of a drawing of but but just imagine like a ring of circles, and each one has to blow up just in time, like break through that container, break through that container, break through that container, and God knows how many of those. And that's what is supposedly happening with this bomb. But that means that they're dropping it from 30,000 feet, in which is very cold up there. All this, like, to get this to work perfectly, it just doesn't make, like, how could you time that, right? Like, this one time, this guy was making a small model of it, like, to show people, or a science project. It looks like I forgot that picture too. I'm just not great with the pictures. I got the second part of the episode with lots of pictures, but it was two halves of imagine like a golf ball cut in half, but it was metal, and he was using like a screwdriver to like maneuver it, and he had whatever uranium inside all these shells, and his screwdriver slipped and it let out a lethal amount of radiation, almost killing him. So what I'm saying by that is, have you ever shipped anything? Things bounce, and even if you put tons of padding or styrofoam peanuts, which I don't know if they had been, inside a box, you're shipping this thing that could easily, if it was real, could just blow up on transport. And then it's up in a plane 30,000 feet shaking around and it doesn't go off. Like, it just doesn't, that the chances of that is just, how about when they get it out of the box and before they drop it? How do they know it's not going to blow up in their plane before they even drop it, right? All this stuff. Okay, so little boy was a gun type of nuclear weapon. That was another thing. Okay, I'll try this. So there, like I told you, there's a few different types of weapons that they use. They used for the nukes. They used this one like implosion device, and the other was the little boy, the one in Hiroshima, was it was called a gun type explosion. So it was like a bullet going through each barrel, like having tons of barrels, and that's how it set it off. So like building energy. If you're not watching me, it's imagine a gun and a bullet having like chambers to go through, and it just keeps growing energy. You can read the book for more specific stuff. Supposedly, it was detonated at 2 feet when it was dropped from 2,000 feet. When it was dropped at 30,000, it was carried in a 55-gallon steel drum held together with straps. They better be good, because they knew if the U-235 removed it all, it would go critical. They never did any testing of how it would do at 30,000 feet either. They're just really trusting the Manhattan Project. I'm sure they were dead on. They figured out the gun design. They spent all this time working it, that the uranium, they figured out the plutonium from uranium. Instead of the device, like, they never tested the device. So either they never tested this gun device. So they either were 180% sure it was going to work, or they just knew it wasn't going to work, right? And I'm going to go with they knew it wouldn't work. At one point, they realized that it's not going to work, right? Like I said, so you either think they either are super, like, that's unheard of in ever anything, to never test something it would work. But just because something isn't going to work doesn't mean, just like a placebo sometimes cures cancer. It's like, that's this was probably the real, I think probably false flags and psyops have been going on for a long time, but this was probably just it. So, careless information. Okay, so the first bomb, the Trinity bomb, the first test, that was in the one in New Mexico, that we get again the idea of the mushroom cloud. It was the first test of a fully assembled nuclear bomb, the imploded thing. Read this book. I'll put it if you want to learn more about like the physics between the implosion and the gun part. I read it twice because I read it and then do my notes. I couldn't understand. I had no idea what it was talking about. I just knew whatever he was saying was complicated, and they couldn't have done it without a computer if they didn't do it. So they called it Gadget. It was detonated near Alamogordo, New Mexico at 5:29 a.m., July 16, 1945. So around this area, they had this ranch house and ancillary building, ancillary buildings. There were 425 people present. And I like this quote: extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So there's lots of evidence that points that it happened. There's witness reports, comments miles away, um, in the paper, and then Robert Oppenheimer, who we all know, he's the founding director of Los Alamos Lab, the father of the atomic bomb. 1 month before the Trinity explosion, he's quoted saying, "The atomic bomb is shit." I'm not saying that proves anything, but the man who is known for creating the atomic bomb is saying a month before the Trinity explosion, the atomic bomb is shit. I don't know. I don't know. So, like already 65 German and Japanese cities have been destroyed to rubble at this point, just completely decimated. So the atomic bomb could do more damage than all those bombings. It would make radiation unlivable, and you couldn't live in the cities where it's dropped unlivable for thousands of years. Why would it be shit? And in the pre-Trinity betting pool held by the scientists, there was a gamble how many tons of TNT would be released on this historic godlike weapon day. And what did Oppenheimer guess? He guessed a fraction of the, I think, he guessed 300 tons of TNT. And he was the father, he guessed 300 tons. The alleged result was 20 kilotons of TNT. So you can see, maybe he's just a pessimistic guy. I mean, that doesn't prove anything, but just interesting. Circumstantial evidence, I guess. He was quoted, Richard Rhodes was a journalist, and he was quoted, "Oppenheimer was a fascinating and complicated man. Fundamentally, he seemed to have some qualities of an actor." It's because they're all actors. So unit testing. Trinity, again, 3 for 3 on their drops of these bombs. And unit testing is when you test each part of like for software, you test each part to see, can it work on itself? So when they put it together and they do the big test, they would know like which apparatus went wrong. Well, they did none of that. They didn't care. They did do a high explosive shell surrounding the core was unit tested with blanks without the uranium. It failed. Most key part, it failed, but they said, you know what? Let's make some last minute alterations and then we'll get it. We see what we did wrong. No integration testing to see if it worked well when they all put it together. It's literally like building a bridge with steel that had never undergone a sample testing of how much that steel could hold to make sure like that was accurately or well-made steel. You wouldn't do that, right? So why would you do it with when you spend this day hundreds of millions of dollars already researching the thing that you wouldn't test it before you went balls deep in it? I don't think so. Jumbo. All right, now we're getting to my photos. Woo! So this is Jumbo. Jumbo was a device. So, supposedly plutonium was very hard to make at this point in our, that's why people can't make their own, because it's so hard to get, which I think I get to later. But it might fizzle out. The bomb might not work. I mean, hell, they didn't even test it. So maybe it's going to break. So they made this apparatus that would able to, if anyone's looking, it's like imagine like a big, like a semi-tractor of wheels, like tons. It looks like 12 wheels here, and it's on a trailer, and it looks like what I would think like a big bomb, right? I feel like that's fair. It looks like a huge bomb. It's probably like, it's at least it's at least like 15 people long. And yeah, so this was going to catch the plutonium in case of the bomb didn't work. They were certain it wouldn't, but anyway, so they made it all the way like in I think it's at Pittsburgh. And so, but I can't be certain anymore, so don't quote me on that. But it was made far away. So they transport it. It's a bitch. Look at it. We don't even have all the highways yet. And they transported this thing all the way to New Mexico. You would think they would have thought of it, to make it a little bit closer, but maybe Pittsburgh steel, maybe that's why they didn't make it there. So they get it all the way to the launch site, and even with their failed shell tests with blanks, they knew it would work. They were damn sure. They were smart enough. They knew it would work. So they shipped it, didn't use it. They just left it on the side. So here's the 100-ton test. That's what it was called. I'm going to click out of this guy. Oh, I showed that picture too soon. But they do, so I told you they did do a test prior to the Trinity test. I didn't tell you this yet, but it had none of the components of the actual nuke. The electrical error caused it to run off 0.25 seconds early. So they could. So when I say that, they couldn't get the timing of a non-nuclear bomb, but they did when they dropped it out of a 30,000-foot plane, which 0.25 seconds could mean a lot, supposedly, right? A lot of non-damage. So this non-nuke resulted in a 5-foot deep, 30-foot wide blast crater. I don't know. I think that was this one. I think that was this picture that I'm showing. And anyone looking, it's very small. It's very small. Those frames were initially classified of that first non-nuke bomb because they were classified because you were going to see then that it means nothing. That they look exactly like the supposed nuclear bomb, but they were classified, and then they were used in 1947 in a cheesy Manhattan Project documentary presented as pictures as the actual Trinity site. So you can understand why. You can understand why that is. I'm trying to find this one thing, but this one picture, but I can't find it here. I'll find it in the end, and maybe we'll reference it then. There's only one photo of the actual Trinity site, and it was this red picture that was not even supposed to be taken. I'm trying to pull it up for people that are watching. So I'm sorry if you just bear with me 1 second. Oh God, I don't know where it is. Here it is, guys. Nice. So this is the only picture that is from the Trinity site. So if you're listening again, it's got a red background, totally red, with like an explosion and kind of like the mushroom cloud. So what does this prove? Nothing. This little dainty photo proves nothing. It's the only color photograph of this event by an unauthorized, quote unquote, unauthorized photographer. Look, it was so big, people just saw it and they took photos of it. For Trinity, every witness, remember I told you 450 people were there, they were told to lay face down, feet first to the blast, and close their eyes and cover their ears with their hands. So everyone lie down on the ground and cover their eyes and close their ears. I get, it should, and I don't blame people for like believing stuff because like this is what they like. Can you imagine? You have all these journalists there. They go, for your safety, it's always for your safety. For your safety, guys, I want you to, I know we're about to explode this, but I need you to lie down, put your face first on the ground. I want you to cover your eyes and cover your ears and put your feet the other way. So you're looking this way. So in case you snap a peek, it could blind you, guys. That's how powerful it would blind you. And this is for your safety, right? So now that's what they do for them when they release this Trinity bomb. It's this one was the implosion one, not the gun one. Both like didn't work. They never tested this method either. They picked this area because of the flat terrain to minimize the effects of the blast. It was well distanced from populated areas because all that radiation, but close to Los Alamos for travel. They wanted clear and sunny weather for data collection and close to the railroad for travel. So some issues here. The flat terrain that was chosen because to minimize the effects of the blast in New Mexico, that same flat terrain was chosen for Hiroshima because it would maximize effects. So that's a little weird. Maybe they just mixed it up. Sunny weather was chosen, so you could witness it, even though everyone was lying face down. But then they chose to do it before dawn at 5:30 when it was still dark. Okay, so maybe, they saw the moment, they seized it. It was going to rain that day, and they wanted to get it out quick, right? Bomb goes boom. 20 kilotons of TNT desert sand melted, became radioactive with light green glass named Trinonite. It left a 5-foot deep crater and 30-foot wide. Where have I heard that before? So to be fair, the 100-ton test was 20 feet in the air, and the Trinity gadget was 100 feet in the air. So the non-nuke was on a 20-foot platform, and this one was a 100-foot platform, and the gadget was 20,000 tons and not 100 tons. So essentially, this just makes zero sense. Is what I'm saying. They both created the same size crater, and here this is this awesome. I love this photo. I love this photo. This is the photo of supposedly the nuke going off. They're examining it, and does this look like a nuke to you? If you're not looking, it is literally, if it's a 5-foot crater, it's 5 feet. That's it, and it's nothing. It's nothing. There's no. Where is their mask? Where's the radiation? Just see, it's all propaganda, guys. It's lies. It's lies. It's lies. It's lies. This makes zero sense. This is just such a powerful photo. I posted on my Twitter. Maybe you guys saw like a week or two ago. That was a nuclear bomb. Okay. So yeah. So both the non-nuke, that was the 100-ton test, and the Trinity, which was the nuke test, both created a 5-foot deep, 30-foot wide crater. It doesn't make any sense at all. Doesn't make any sense at all. And let's see. Oh, and then they also in 1946 detonated an atomic bomb in Operation Crossroads, which was like out in the Hawaii somewhere. And they detonated the nuke 90 feet under the water. The ocean floor was 180 feet. It was 23 kilotons compared to 20 kilotons like for Trinity. So it was a little more powerful, not too much, 3 kilotons more. And what do you know? The shallow crater on the seafloor was 30 feet deep and 200 feet wide. I think I have this wrong. It was barely stronger. So like, did the water help the explosion? It was barely stronger. So yeah. So again, it's just propaganda. The picture you have in your mind is much bigger than a 5-foot deep by 30-foot deep crater when a nuke goes off in New Mexico. And same with the ocean, right? I'm expecting when I see a nuke, I think total meltdown, total destruction for miles. 5-foot by 30-foot crater. And it's not 5 feet deep all for the 30 feet. It's just like one little spot, as you saw in the picture, that's 5 foot deep. And then maybe they probably dug around 30 feet deep to show that. So yeah. So what about the Trinite, right? In the Mahabharata or whatever, they have glass green on the desert floor. And in New Mexico, they also had it after they dropped the Trinity. All that green glass, it changed all that radiation. It's mildly, you can touch it, but it's light green color. Well, a little of it's, if ever, has been reported at any other test sites. It's only been found there. But you know what? There is a similar item found on Earth called tektite. And it's supposedly from the moon or from meteors or something. It's found in southern Egypt. It's not known for sure how it got there. But I would love to go look at the site in New Mexico, kind of take a look at all that green glass. But you know what? The Army had dumped soil all over it. So you can't. Damn it, just like with 9/11, they took away the steel that they used the thermite to bring down, but they didn't want it. It was too painful to look at. We had to ship it away and use that stuff to fix potholes. Right? Disgusting. But yeah, so the Army covered up all that area, so you could never figure out what happened. So weird, right? So weird. Fool Me Twice, Japan, 1945. I don't know why that's the title, so that has nothing to do with what I'm going to say. Everything in a 2-mile radius was vaporized. It's called atomic carbonization. So if you look at this, the photo, guys, if you're listening, the cool old cars, and there are bodies. It's so this whole episode is not to negate what happened. This was horrible, horrible. Both, it's a whole nother topic to talk about America, imperialism, and what happened in that Japan war. Pearl Harbor was instigated. They asked us not to do that. San Diego was a much better base than in Hawaii strategically, and we moved it there to get, because FDR wanted us to get involved with the war, and he knew it was coming. Just like, it's disgusting, right? It's just disgusting. But anyway, there's a bunch of bodies here. They're clearly charred. Very sad stuff. Very sad. But supposedly everything is vaporized, and all these bodies are clearly just burned, right? So what happens with a nuke? Does it really where's the vaporization? Where's all their shadows? Little Boy. So that was the bomb they dropped on Hiroshima. So Trinity was a more complex implosion device. Little Boy is much simpler. It was that gun device that they never tested. So the design, because they had limited U-235, they did simple tests, and for this gun device. And at last minute there was a little fail, but they made a last minute modification and it was changed. All this isn't like Wikipedia, his sources, so it's all stuff he's not made. So it's just like a story, right? Like scientists noticed at the last second some difficulty, and they made a change, and so they were successful. Little Boy, the stuff was actually shipped out. They were so starting to work, it was shipped out to be closer to Japan before Trinity was ever even successfully went off. That is confidence, dude. You shipped the bomb before you even tested the precursor to see if it would work. Just insane. On a weapon based purely on theory that has never been done before, that has E equals MC squared Einstein's backing, that has been told it is shit, is already sent out before the first one even goes off. Absurd, dude. Freaking absurd, right? Jesus. So they said the reason why they never tested was limited uranium-235. In 1944, it was running at full capacity. Production in November equaled all months previous combined. December had over 200 grams. So if actually uranium was in actually short supply and they needed to, use, it was in short supply, for a war-ending weapon, they would have made like that their priority, right? They would have found it. That's just what they do. Okay, that's just what they do. And that's just what they do. And yeah, so yeah. Okay, it's a new design. There's all this stuff like that. Liv just FaceTime me. Hey, Liv. All right, I gotta go. I'm recording. And so yeah, it was a new design. It was jostled. There's thousands of pounds, thousands of miles that they sent this thing off. Like if the male part went in the female part, it would set the bomb off. It's thousands of pounds, thousands of miles. Again, I think I already talked about this. They must be using great peanut packing. Amazon could learn a thing or two from the shipping of these nukes overseas. They never took into account of their testing about heating, freezing, reheating, 30,000 feet. So like this was the example. Suppose you have the AK-47, which was, there's 100 million worldwide. It was shipped everywhere. It worked in mud, dirt, blood, everything. They still use them today. It was the best thing that communism ever created. If you're watching, here's the picture. I think this was this was also the Trinity explosion. But the AK-47, was better than anything ever created of its time, right? It's still great. It's easy to disassemble, clean. So you have these AK-4, you're in a war. You're in a war for 3 years. You're using the AKs. They're working great. Someone comes up to you and says, you know what? I have a design for an M16. It's more powerful, but it is more likely to jam. It has totally different ammo. I've never tested it. I don't know if it works. I have no idea. I can't test it. How many do you want? Who would say yes? No person would say yes. And that's the example with the nuke. Like, they've been successful bombing 67 cities in Japan. Why would they switch, right? Or take a chance. Spend all these resources studying, But after the war ended, this was so key. The little boy design would never again be required. Plans, diagrams, all destroyed. That's so weird. They also destroyed the moon landing telemetry data. They also destroyed pretty much everything. So they destroyed all that stuff because, they spent billions of dollars figuring out, and they just got the Goldilocks formula to make it work. Then it functioned perfectly on the first try. First try, it functioned perfectly. They destroyed everything. And so when they wanted to start doing it again, they had to reinvent them again. And they were made, so they reinvented it again from scratch. They came up with the perfect formula again that was destroyed. None of the same people on the project. And so wow, amazing. Just so amazing. So like I think I already said, no testing. They were so sure it would work, or they did no testing because they knew that it wasn't going to work, and Einstein didn't come up with some crazy idea, and they needed to make plans for staging a fake Japan, a fake psyop. I have to take a little break, 1 sec. Okay, I'm back. I had to go to the bathroom. These long recordings, dude. I'm using Zoom. Okay, anyway, let me get back to the screen sharing. Oh no, I gotta click all the photos again. Gosh darn it. Okay. All righty. Good. Now we're good. Yeah. Okay. So where were we? We were talking about, they knew it wouldn't work. They either knew it would work 100%, which no scientist would ever do that, or they knew it wouldn't work and they needed to stage a fake Japan atomic operation. So firestorms. A firestorm is what happens when these bombings create such intensity and heat that it creates its own wind system. It's like a natural phenomenon. It's created during some of the largest like brush fires and wildfires. It also happened in cities in like Hamburg and Dresden, and then it also happened in the atomic bombings of Hiroshima. And the Hiroshima firestorm probably caused more damage than the blast itself. It's a direct quote from one of the million sources on the atomic bombs. So like in Dresden, at 10:09, bombs dropped, unleashing massive firestorm. Basically imagine a tornado tossed in flames, which either kills you because it melts like your skin and you die, or you get suffocated because it sucks up all the oxygen. And the US ignored the fire damage from the bomb in Hiroshima, not including it. And the reason why was because firestorms are created during regular bombings, and this is too similar, that's also happening in nuclear bombing, doesn't do well for your psyop. Like in a incendiary raid on Tokyo in March of 45, it killed 83.7, I assume, thousand, burned 25% of Tokyo buildings. 64 Japanese cities were already destroyed by non-nuclear air raids. All these photos, most of them remain classified, similar to the atomic sites, and they did this because they needed the lie to set in, so they wouldn't show you the photos. It wasn't because they were worried about, it's always, we don't want to put you through that and to see all these horrible things. Oh my God, it could be devastating. So these photos, this tree photo here, if you're looking, I'll make it a little bigger. This is in, where was it in? ground, 2,700 feet southwest of Nagasaki, so not far. Does this look like a nuke wiped it out, or does this look like see, it just knocked them down, just knocked them down? And as you can see, there's still some trees standing upright. So what other than a 20, or maybe you see this and say, wow, that's a nuke that knocked it out. But exploding trees occurs during forest fires, similar to with those firestorms, similar to any other forest fire. It makes the heat inside the thing and it just pops. And this does not rule out, this picture, it doesn't rule out the nuke or anything like that, but it shows that this isn't the only thing that causes this. I don't know if this was just the same photo, or I think it's the same photo. But yeah, so just wanted to see that. So this was in Hiroshima. You see we have things still standing. Maybe this photo is a little better. So you still have, so if a nuke fell off here, there's telephone poles still standing, concrete and brick buildings still standing. So I guess they don't, Oh, and the response of why these telephone poles and buildings are still upright was because they were directly under the shock. They were right on the shock came down almost directly on them. So not from an angle, it came, so it just actually knocked them deeper in the ground, But then I just showed you, like this photo, you still see plenty of things standing. So this makes, how, and obviously it's not like a perfect circle. Like if the bomb came here, it would, but it didn't mathematically. The shock wave had to be at an angle somewhere, right? All this isn't the same spot. So how did it come directly on top of all these? Look here, there's even a bridge still standing. So obviously, if you guys aren't looking, you're just listening, there's just pictures of telephone poles and buildings still standing and things like that. So, and again, the response was that it's because there's directly under it. So it doesn't make any sense. Get these photos out of here now. Diagram of little boy. Ugh, I don't have that photo. All right, whatever. But basically, the picture, it's just there's all these things with the PSI, and it doesn't make any sense with the, give me 1 second here. Sorry, I forgot some photos there, so I wanted to make sure I had them all. But I'm going to pull up this PSI chart and this other thing to give you a better visualization if you're watching, and I'll explain it when I pull it up here. But so this is like if the bomb went off. So this little circle here, the inner circle is 20 PSI, and I'll explain what that means. But at 20 PSI, heavily built concrete buildings are damaged or demolished. Fatalities would be 100%. Wind speed would be 502 miles per hour, which is fast as shit. The outer circle outside this would be 5 PSI, okay? And residential buildings would collapse, injuries, fatalities would be widespread, 163 miles per hour. Now, obviously, like it's not a perfect circle, so there's going to be some areas, maybe if you draw an imaginary circle outside this little circle, it'd be 10 PSI. So everyone listening, imagine, it looks like, imagine like a pool ball with like a cue stick, or like the cue, like a cue stick circle inside the cue ball. And that would be like the heavy area, and then outside of it would be the less area. So in 10 PSI, winds would be 294 miles per hour. Just to give you some example, like in a category 5 hurricane, 157 mile per hour winds, catastrophic damage, most trees uprooted, poles downed. So even at 5 PSI, that's the highest level hurricane. It's higher than the highest level hurricane force. And yet those pictures I just showed you, there's telephone poles standing, and that was, we don't know exactly where that was, but it had to be within the 5 PSI range of Hiroshima, and buildings, so that's okay. The buildings are still standing, but the telephone poles, all that stuff, just doesn't make any sense. Doesn't make any sense. Essentially, that's what I'm saying. This was an interesting story. A guy named Alex P. Seversky. He was born in 1894. He lived to be and lived in 1974. He was a Russian American aviation pioneer. He was a very influential and airplane guy, pretty much. He made an inspection tour of Hiroshima and Nagasaki soon after the war ended, and the extensive bombing and aerial. It was published in 1946 in a magazine and book in 1950. So he said basically that it wasn't bad at all, and they misled the atomic weapon to forestall, or so that the response is for what he said was because he's trying to mislead the public because it was a horrible weapon, and he said this stuff to make us not feel bad over guilt of dropping the bomb. And to refute that, I showed this comic picture of a globe with us blowing up, and there's a head and arms and feet of a Japanese person saying, "So sorry," probably like in an Asian accent, to show that the American did not feel bad and they had no guilt for dropping the atomic bomb on Japan. So very knowledgeable guy. He wouldn't lie. Why would he lie, right? Why would he lie? He doesn't work for the American government, so I would trust him. He said that smaller towns were burnt out, but the color was pink, which is the normal color when you have like rubble and metal together. There was lots of small and modern concrete buildings still standing, factories, unscathed bridges. He was very excited. His quote was, "Keyed up for my first view of an atom bomb city, prepared for the radically new sights. Utter astonishment, Hiroshima looked exactly like all other burnt cities I observed. There was the familiar pink dotted with charred trees. There was telephone poles, and only one of the 20 city's bridges were down, topped by undamaged flagpoles, painted railings, air raid precaution signs. He was looking for a bald spot where everything had been vaporized. Nothing there. There was a long fire to twist metal and melt glass, just like other Japanese cities. Where was the crater? Where was the crater that happened in the ocean, in the desert? I guess the response would be, well, it exploded 1,900 feet up. It was just too high for it to form, or probably it would be too difficult to dig a shallow crater on such short notice for our propaganda reasons. So they just, didn't mention that. Most plants survived and bloomed again the following year. I thought there was so much radiation that 1,000 years you wouldn't be able to go into the city. So weird. There's over 170 trees known as survivor trees in Hiroshima, which are cherished as a reminder that, to not fight in war again. It's just a lie. It's frustrating, right? It's just so frustrating. Like, they just constantly lie to us. No matter what the estimates are, any deaths by fire or by nuke are just, which they were mostly fire, are horrible and so sad, right? No, civilians don't fight wars. We don't want war. I don't hate anybody. They don't hate, no other country hates us. Maybe they do if they're fed propaganda, just like how the left and the right with China and Russia, they're all one and the same, dude. They're all one and the same. They're elite people. They probably were in the same groups, the same Freemasonic groups as our leaders. They're all connected. They don't dislike each other the same way Republicans and Democrats don't dislike each other. It's all a show. The Hiroshima population size is greatly exaggerated for obvious reasons. Everyone left. They knew they were being bombed. They left the cities. They got out. So the shipping port, there was no shipping in it. The city was pretty empty. There was already previous bombings of these cities. They most left. They went into like the countryside. 8.5 million people were displaced, Japanese people. 120 of the 365 evacuated before the bomb, supposedly. I'm sure more than that. There's all these books and eyewitnesses. A famous book came out eventually in 1959 about all the eyewitnesses. It was 60 children. 1959 is 13 years or more than, 14 years later. Why so long? Why so long? Because they had to make up these stories. The government in Japan today recognizes about 1% of population having radiation illnesses, which I'll get to in a second. All the stories of children, it's a bright light, a blinding light. Just like in Dresden, a British rifleman, when they dropped phosphorus, burning phosphorus on the streets of houses, it would burn bright white to dull red, and corpses would get burnt. They were so brittle, they would turn into clouds of ash. His testimony is the same as the children's testimony. They dropped after the propaganda bomb dropped on Japan, the propaganda there switched to like, oh, we know we were wrong. We don't want the narrative. Hence, like this testimony, like that's how they got it. Like these people are just, you can get little kids to say whatever you want. The Americans, these stories, they can't read the names of these people. I couldn't understand the names, let alone double check that these kids are these stories. You could make up people. You can easily make up people. Same way, like they use fake whatever's going on now. The news has been caught. They use photos of like ski accidents of people hooked up to tubes and everything, and they claim it's from this certain thing going on. It's back then you had less info. So imagine how easy it would be then. Like there's this one famous book, Last Train from Hiroshima. He was in Hiroshima when that blast went along. He was in his Mitsubishi factory. He went home to see his wife. His house was gone. He worked 2.5 miles from the blast. That means he was having winds 257 miles per hour, but he survived. Then he decided, I got to leave. I'm too sad here. Where does he pick to go? He takes a train at Koi Station, which was, again, 2.29 kilometers from Hiroshima. So within the huge 5 PSI blast, and the train's still okay, even though in 1995, a Kobe earthquake, which was a 6.9 on the Richter scale, took 3 months to repair all the train tracks. 15 kilotons is what they attribute to an earthquake. Well, the little boy in Hiroshima was 16 kilotons. So it took them 90 days for a train on a lesser force, and it took them 2 days to fix the trains when a nuke bomb went off. They have less technology. They've already been bombed to hell, but yet they could fix it in 2 days, and he could still get on this train. Here's the PSI picture I wanted. So like 1 PSI is window glass shatters. If people just listening, it's just like a little graph of like 2 PSI, 70 miles per hour, 3 is 102, 5 is 163, 10, 294, 20. And so 20 PSI is pretty, it's like blown to hell. 10, you're like blown to hell. 5, you're pretty blown to hell. Okay, so they're at 38 miles per hour, wind glass shatters because of, I think, probably things flying in the air. So this guy was just lucky, I guess. He was in the 5 PSI, where 163, and the train tracks didn't collapse, or they didn't, they were able to fix them within 2 days. Just, and that's like a famous book. You see, it's all just propaganda. It's just stories for you to hear this weapon that's godlike, that can destroy a civilization. And that's what it is. Another, like all this testimony, and you read the book if you want, but it's all just makes zero. It's all the same. It's all things like one lady, she sees a bright flash. So they were told in Japan, when they see a bright flash, to, what do they tell you? To lay face down, cover your eyes and ears. Well, how would they know to do that? Why would they tell you to lie down when you see a flash and covers your eyes and your ears if they never knew what a nuclear bomb was? How would they know that? They wouldn't know that. Exactly. UC scientist says very few die from radiation. He believes in the nukes. According to mainstream sources, anyone in Hiroshima within 50 years would die of radiation. This was wild. General Crawford F. Hey, Sams, look up this dude's quotes if you can. It's a huge quote. I'm just going to pull out some big things from the quote. Nothing could be established in Japan without U.S. permission. All groups were under his control, everybody going into Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The president was, these are all direct quotes, if I even forget to say, this is all what he said. President was looking for a new deterrent against future war. Air power had failed. Air power will destroy civilization, and it failed because it didn't even bring Germany to its knees. Military production actually increased during our bombings. The president wrote him a letter. You will play up the devastating effect of the atomic bomb. Like the current situation, anybody who had been in Hiroshima, now I got to say, anybody who had been in Hiroshima and died within 6 months, whether got run over by a bicycle or whatnot, will be credited with death from the atomic bomb. Now, where have I heard something so similar that's going on today? Oh, death certificates. You know what I don't want to say because then algorithm will flag me. But it's the same tricks. Any death that happened in Hiroshima within 6 months was an atomic bomb death. See, it wasn't they used the word, that's how you know this guy's like from the 50s. See, it wasn't a bing. See, it wasn't like bing like the publicity said here. See, a bomb went off and the city disappeared. Not a thing like that happened. It took 36 hours for 2/3 of the city to burn down. 2K died from the immediate blast, with the buildings crumbling and such killed others. What I'm trying to do, all these are quotes. What I'm trying to do is end the war with one bomb. One of us got a priest to say he guessed that 100,000 people died when the bomb went off. Major planners in the War Department were using their own propaganda, comparing it to Tokyo, which was burned with high explosives. Actually, the atomic bomb was a pretty damn poor killer in comparison. If you can deter a war, for God's sake, let's do it and blow up the effects all you want, but don't believe your own propaganda. Those are all powerful statements. Those alone, like all this evidence. All right, we're almost done. It's still got some good facts, so you can argue with anybody about how they're fake. So the Enola Gay was the plane that dropped the bomb, and like all historical stories, it has this once-in-a-lifetime chance, this feel-good story, this underdog overcoming the obstacles, saving the day, right? Thomas Farabee was the one accredited for pulling the string just at the right point. He just nailed it. But of course, there was an autopilot thing that set the bomb. But anyway, supposedly, Tibbets, this pilot, then does his signature sharp diving turn away from the situation, and he flies 11.5 miles away. And the Enola Gay was rocked by a blast of the atomic bomb. They looked back, and the city was hidden in a cloud, boiling up in a mushrooming, terrible and tall. They felt the shock waves, and then another wave, which, based on science, this merger effect, you could not feel both shock and the other wave. You would feel one. But once they were 368 miles away, they turned, and the mushroom cloud was no longer visible. After all safe, the crew members were asked to record an impression, like a radio broadcast, they were told. And so they said, column of a smoke rising fast, fiery red core, bubbling mass, purple-gray in color, fire springing up everywhere. You get the idea. It's just a story. It's just everything, like it's just a story, right? It's real poetic. It sounds like a godlike weapon. One interesting quote was that one guy on the ship or on the plane said it was a mushroom. There was a mushroom shape that Captain Parsons spoke about, and Parsons before them told him no one knows what will happen. It's never been dropped from a high range before, but you will probably see a mushroom cloud, kind of like feeding them intel. Like, you should say this. God knows what they really said to him. Like, you should say this when you leave. But yeah. And then all this stuff, they said like they were level with it and the cloud, and then it wasn't. And read the book for more. It makes zero sense. But then, this was crazy. Then, so they sent a memo: no flights near Hiroshima on this morning. None, all canceled. But luckily, Luckily, an unauthorized B-29 plane missed the memo. And it was a recon plane, including a photographer. What are the chances? And on the radar, they see a B-29 flying in the opposite direction, like, oh, they've been spotted or something. And then within seconds, they see this brilliant flash of lights as a light bulb went on in his eyes. And he said, oh my gosh, what are the chances of that? What are the chances? What are the chances? So he's flying, and this photographer takes this once in a lifetime photo. Here, if you're not looking, it's just like the picture of Hiroshima with a big cloud over it from really high in the sky. Just, this was hidden for decades, by the way, this picture. So claiming, the Enola Gay was shocked, destroyed, like was cracked and crinkled by these shock waves, and they were 11 miles away. Well, this joker was directly over it. He was going to, trailing behind Enola Gay, and by 11 minutes. And if their plane was shook and they were 11 miles away, this guy was right over the atomic bomb and took this photo. So how his plane wasn't just rattled and destroyed, I guess he must have been very lucky, right? Clearly, this is like this is just, they took this photo because they dropped a bunch of fire bombs on Nagasaki. Where's my other? Nope, not that. This is the smoke, guys. If you're watching, this is another incendiary bombing dropping on Kobe. Key things is the smoke stops the water line, which same thing in Hiroshima. A nuclear fire wouldn't stop at the water line. And it looks there's no way you could tell the difference, right? Like a regular, we couldn't tell, the people back then couldn't tell the difference. Okay. No bald spot. I brought that up, that AV-8, the Russian-American guy. This is no bald spot. A nuke would have a bald spot, like where everything was vaporized, totally complete. There's no green glowing trinonite. There's no melted sludge and slag at ground zero. There's nothing. It's a fire. There's concrete buildings still standing. It's a fire. It was horrible, but it was a fire. Okay. Oh yeah, this was a good picture too. And then this was the before and after photo. Guys, if you're just listening, it's a photo, like an aerial view of Hiroshima. And then the other view underneath it is just, they, because they didn't have Photoshop back then, they just made it white. So what, like lighter. So the light is supposed to be like the real like, see, we wiped it off the face of the earth. It's empty. It's empty. It's empty. But the issue with this, if you're watching, you see this white photo, it goes all the way out into the ports, or like the docks here. Well, here's the blast photo, and none of the blast even touched the docks. So how are they white and damaged if none of it goes out that far? It's because I'm sure most of you guys don't know. I took a photo class in high school, and in a dark room to develop photos. And there's ways you can make things brighter or less brighter. And that's why these photos are in strips, because they would manipulate each little part. Japan had no air defense. Again, we were successful with 100% of our bombings pretty much. And so there's no reason why they had to take this in little sections. They could have taken, but it's because they wanted to manipulate the photo, right? That's why it's in strips. Okay, good. Check. All right. Insert blast with fire. Trickery is the way of war. This was interesting as well. So there was it just goes again, just such scam. Certain areas were off limits. We weren't allowed to, for some reason, we didn't bomb Kyoto, which is this ancient historical city in Japan, or the Imperial Palace in Tokyo. So why wouldn't we, right? If I was in an all-out war and I'm willing to drop a bomb that would evaporate a city, why not take out the emperor and just cause political chaos, right? Doesn't make, and I don't know, the author didn't go into it, but I'm sure, see, like it's a scam, dude. 67 cities were already 50% destroyed before the nukes. Um, so if they, so Hiroshima, if we're dropping a nuke on it, um, it's a strategic city. It has like 3 Mitsubishi plants in it building weapons of war. Thousands of Americans are dying and others. So you just leave that city go. We already dropped all these bombs on 67 cities that are destroyed. We just left this one pristine that had all these factories in it. Who's making these decisions, dude? Because I have never been to a war school, but that's a horrible idea. It's because it was already damaged. They did drop bombs on it. It was already damaged. It was already like recon photos. They show like it may have looked not damaged, but it was on its last legs. And with a good psyop, you thought it was a fully functioning bomb making, war making, manufacturing city that was destroyed with one bomb. The day before they dropped the nuke, they had over 1,000 B-29s planes drop bombs on towns neighboring Hiroshima. These cities were barren. There was nothing to drop on. So probably if they had that capability to do that the day before Hiroshima and neighboring cities, who's to say they didn't send those bombs to Hiroshima the night before? Then, they clear the skies. They send an Enola Gay the next day to drop some like a big flash grenade bomb that disperses some radiation and then fires, or everyone can, you can have it like on radar that this one plane went down, they dropped something. And it was also like they drop these bombs at nighttime to be able to take aerial photos, and they get that aerial photo of you have all the smoke of the fire burning. And and then there was also small radiation that could have been released in like a big flash bomb, and that would have caused the acute radiation poisoning from a dirty bomb. It's just, it's a lie. It's a lie. Oh, and this is a photo, or maybe I'll get to that photo in a little second. So what about Nagasaki? Okay, so I'm almost done. I hope you guys are enjoying it. So it's a long, thin city strung through a valley. Again, dropping on they dropped the atomic bomb in another Mitsubishi factory in Port City that was important and strategic that they just missed earlier. They just forgot about it. People are dying and they don't want to bomb. Oh, and then people say, well, they didn't bomb it that bad because there were hospitals and schools there. Dude, does this look like we care about schools? No, they didn't care. They already bombed it. It wasn't destroyed, but they needed another story, and this was the perfect place. And this story was different. The little boy was like this heroic, like he pulled the lever right at the right time, the right spot. But this one was like a mess up, supposedly, like there was cloud coverage. And so this was also, so there's a firestorm photo of this here. But since it was a small valley spot, you can't have both. Like you can't have a firestorm, which happened because it was, like imagine like a 2-mile valley thing. So if the nuke dropped, it would vaporize everything, right? It was within that PSI range that would just demolish everything, and the mountains would contain it. But they have a firestorm there. So you can't have both, right? You can't either the nuke wiped everything out, or we dropped fire bombs and it started a firestorm and burned everything. Does that make sense? But there's firestorm pictures. I forget which ones, but it looked like this. These clouds are formed during firestorms, and so again, that story just doesn't make any sense. They have a firestorm with a nuke, which it shouldn't happen. So this is like the last part. Why would Japan surrender? Oh, here's a photo of in Nagasaki or Hiroshima of a guy who had a photo that with a lens camera that zooms, which zoom wasn't invented yet in personal cameras. And he had a 1930s Nikon, and yet he's 4 miles from a blast, but was able to take these photos by chance. It's just propaganda. It's propaganda, propaganda, propaganda. Woo! Oh yeah. My God, what we've done. So Japan didn't surrender from the bombs. When they talked about surrendering, they never even mentioned the atomic bombs like days after it or, right around it. They really surrendered because Russia, the Soviets, were about to declare war on Japan. Japan couldn't, they're already embarrassed. It was such a proud country. Ugh, so amazing. I talk about this all the time, just badasses, stabbing themselves if they embarrass their family. I mean, brave, brave guys, kamikaze in planes. They made them out to be some evil people, but so powerful, so technologically advanced. I mean, they were able to conquer Korea, where my fiance is from. They were able to conquer China, Manchuria, and enslave these people. They weren't not, but just vicious. So they were an isolationist country for the longest time, technologically so advanced. Amazing. But they surrendered. They knew if Soviets invaded them because they were closer, no more emperor, no more tradition. When the commies get a hold of you, good luck. Just like they're doing today. They just discredit, they just ruin everything they touch, those Bolshevik commies. But Bolsheviks around too that we have today. So yeah, atomic bomb's not real. What about a hydrogen bomb? It's the same thing. The hydrogen bomb is built on this fission design. They use cheesy movies, cheesy effects, which are made in Laurel Canyon, which is an episode that I'm working on at Mountain Studios. It's hid by an electrified fence. It's the only fully operational movie studio in America, completely self-contained, 100,000 square feet, climate-controlled film vaults, underground parking, helicopter pad, bomb shelter. 19,000 videos are made in this Air Force base, more videos than all of Hollywood studios combined. So I guess this is the real motion picture capital. It's run by the Air Force. It's used for new film technology. It's a whole episode, and I know that's a really interesting thing. And I'm reading that book now as well. But yeah, they made all this stuff in a Hollywood studio. What sort of Hollywood's made, or Moon is on a Hollywood? I'm butchering it. Anthony Kiedis, Illuminati. But yeah, that is the episode, guys. So I think this last thing I want to talk about, this ties in even with in Beirut. We saw that the mushroom cloud in Beirut that happened in, I think it was in August. But I remember people saying it's a nuke because of the mushroom cloud. And that's how intense that propaganda is. You automatically think a mushroom cloud is a nuke. Those mushroom clouds are formed by every bomb. And regular people don't. I didn't know that. It's just a lie, dude. And they use this fear, and that's why I think they just want you afraid. They keep saying oh, Iran's going to build a nuke, North Korea is going to build a nuke. No one can. And all these big governments go along with it because they get more money for funding. They can keep you afraid. They can keep stealing our tax dollars and funding this military industrial complex that builds things that don't exist, to send you up in outer space that you can't get to. It's all just a scam to keep you not in the moment, not in the present, not in what's real. It's a lie, dude. It's a big lie. And yeah, so that's the show. So everyone, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I blew your mind. Hopefully you realize the nukes are not real. We have bombs. We do not have a nuclear bomb that's going to put us in a nuclear winter. We are going to be okay. Find your loved ones, get married, have kids, find God, find what's real in this world, because a lot of it's a lie. So I think that's the episode today. I gotta do more reading and note taking. Next episode's on 17th century maps. So, but I just want to do this episode because Hamas and all that stuff going on. Maybe it'll help wake some people up. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. Please support the show. Leave a review. Thanks for leaving the reviews if you do. Oh, my buddy Occult Rejects at NY Patriot. He got kicked off YouTube. He's on Rumble now. I told him I would let you guys know. Is there anything else? Listen, my buddy at Moral Bob. He's a good Patreon supporter. I got all these like 5 or 6 great supporters. Thank you guys. Thanks for listening. All that stuff. Take care. Have a good weekend and do something that betters yourself. Keep trying to better yourself. All right, everybody. I'm out. Peace.